When it comes to investing, retirement, taxes, healthcare, and estate planning, the decisions you make today can greatly affect the quality of life for you and your loved ones tomorrow. What you need is straight and unbiased information on the most important issues you'll face when planning for your retirement and financial future. Good news! You found Premier Retirement Radio with Jeff Fogan. Jeff is the founder of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management, and he's been guiding people financially and into retirement for 30 years. So get ready for an hour of the most comprehensive financial information on the radio. Premier Retirement with Jeff Fogan. And now here's Jeff Fogan and Jeff Shea.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Premier Retirement, the show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the dangers and shortcomings of oversimplified retirement plans. Also, the 5 retirement decisions you need to get right before you retire. We'll answer listener questions, and finally, no, AI can't design your retirement portfolio. My name's Jeff Shea. As always, I'm just here to ask the questions, but the words of wisdom, solid advice, they come from the other Jeff in this radio program. It's Jeff Fogan, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management. Jeff, how you doing today?
Doing great. Always fun to be with you and talking about biz, talking about the markets, talking about economy, talking about stuff that I just need to get off my chest. So I'm ready.
Well, the same here too. And likewise, always fun to be with you. And of course, our great listeners here in the greater Tucson area. Let's dive right in today talking about the dangers and shortcomings, Jeff, of oversimplified retirement plans. When people hear oversimplified retirement plan, what does that really mean to them?
Well, I think some people just think that, well, I got here to retirement just by doing stocks and bonds and just sticking the money in the market, setting it and forgetting it. The problem is when you're retired, you're not setting it and forgetting it. You're using the money now. And volatility counts and fundamentals might be important. And the fact that you're not adding to that account, you're not having an employer match your income to put into your retirement and things like that don't happen anymore. So unfortunately, I think the Wall Street model is try to lull you to sleep and make you think that you don't need to do something different in retirement, even though your lifestyle changes 180 degrees. They think that your strategy should keep you there. And then they might throw this thing out there like, well, the rule of thumb is the 4% rule. As long as you don't pull more than 4% out, you'll be okay. Well, that's not true. Statistically, it's not true. It's been proven false with a couple of big market crashes in 2000 and 2008. 2 in a decade is worse than 1 every other decade, or 1 in 29, and the next one in the 2000 range when we're talking about the serious downstrokes. But we've had some volatility in the markets. Governments learn how to manipulate it, but I don't think the market can manipulate it forever. Sometimes they think, well, this is a new day, this is a new time, we can do things different, and don't worry, the market will always come back, everything will be hunky-dory. But how many times have I told the story about Norm, who kept his money in the market and by the rule of thumb to pull 4% out, but only to know that he was losing money every time he pulled money out, locking in losses as the market fell from 2000 to 2003. Sure, it came back, but not on the money he spent, not on the increased amount of stock that he had to sell to live during those 2 or 3 years. Well, the fact is nobody knows the future. We even know that the past has disproven what those rules of thumb used to mean, and they don't mean that anymore. So what about not just the 4% rule? What about the rule of, not the rule of 72, that's another rule, but the rule of 100? You take your age minus 100, and that's how much money you should have at risk. So in other words, if you're 70, you should only have 30% in the market. Well, I beg to differ. It depends. Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. And what do you do with the other 70%? If you had 70% in bonds 5 years ago, and let's say you had mostly long bonds, that 70% is still down over 20 to 40%, depending on what bond portfolio or ETF in bonds that you owned. So if you're having to sell bonds, even if you hold them to maturity, you're selling them at par rate, but you thought because they were worth more than their par rate, that they had a net worth of X, when you really didn't. All you had was the actual value of the bonds, even though you might have paid more for that bond than it was worth, and it's only going to expire and pay you back the $1,000 that it's worth when you bought it. So bonds are not as safe as people think, especially if interest rates go up. Could interest rates go up? Well, the Fed keeps talking about lowering interest rates, but I haven't seen mortgages drop much, maybe a teeny bit. Car loans aren't dropping. Credit card interest rates going up. Are bonds that attractive of a hedge to buy at 4 or 5% rate? Well, probably not. I mean, we're looking at everybody running to gold and silver as the hedge. It's the defensive posture, and central banks and rich people and hedge funds all over the world are just hoarding it. So it's not the bond market that's the offsetting thing to risk to the market that it used to be. So just in the last few years, we've learned that stock and bond portfolio, that bonds can actually be more risky. In fact, if you would have had 70% in the bonds, if you're 70 years old and had 70% in stocks and 30% in bonds, even though the market crashed, it came back fast enough that you wouldn't have locked in enough losses to put you in worse position than you would have been with the opposite portfolio. So we've basically seen every rule of thumb out there disproven just in the last couple of decades, if not even more recent. Since COVID, all kinds of weird things have happened. So when you look at the market and you look at these rules of thumb, and honestly, I think it's because advisors are the people, especially in the Wall Street model brokerage house, because they have a big name on the brokerage house. They think it can go get on the phone, sell you a bunch of stock, and then go golfing the rest of the week. I like golf too, but I also get up early in the morning and manage portfolios for 2 or 3 hours. I do that at night after work. I do golf and I do visit clients and I do a lot of stuff, but it's very active management. I'm watching things. I think in the industry in general, especially the big box stores, they just rely on a big name and just assume you're going to just trust them to park your money and do whatever they want with it. And the other thing is institutions are so big, they kind of drive the market. They're the puppeteers, and if we're not careful, we're just going to be the puppets playing into their game and their scheme to always make money, to drive the market down when they want to buy low, drive the market up when they want to sell high. And believe me, hedge funds and Wall Street and institutions are selling right now more than they're buying. And the Main Street investor is getting all excited of all this hoopla that's going out and buying. Now, is it making a lot of people a lot of money? Well, only if you sell at a high. I mean, if you ride it back down, it's not going to matter. I was just looking at a stock. I'll just name one. It's not a recommendation by any means, but Netflix is down, I think, 30 to 40% from its high just a few months ago. I mean, do you just buy that one and hold on to it just because it's a great stock? Well, I don't know. Is it a good stock? If it's going down, I mean, when's it going to come back? I don't know. These are the Mag 7 stocks that drove the S&P 500. A lot of them are getting really weak. We've got a couple of good ones that are hanging in there. Apple's been weak lately. You've got Microsoft's been weak lately. Meta, really weak lately. Google's okay. Yeah, I mean, there's all these big stocks that have been driving the market. Tesla, who knows, is just really getting sketchy right now. Nvidia, kind of holding up there, but it's certainly not a barn burner like it used to be. And what's growing the market now? It happens to be the smaller cap stocks, the ones that didn't get the big boost and didn't get all the earnings. And part of that is because tariffs are working and because maybe there's some things that economically are helping the non-Mag 7 type companies, but still the market is pretty flat since the beginning of the year. Had a nice sell-off a week or two ago and trying to come back a little bit. Seems like when people take profit in gold and silver, techs pop a little bit. But bottom line is, when you're just throwing your money at the market and something that's a little uncertain and could go up or go down in a big way all over the place, you can't rely on rules of thumb. You can't rely on just, well, over the time, the market will average X, so let's just ride it out. Well, it's a totally different animal when you're taking income. So I think people do very often, especially if you stay with the mainstream brokerage houses and banks and people that are basically, they're in the business to be the market makers. In other words, they're the inventory control. They are the store, and they just keep selling you stuff and hoping you buy what they need to sell. And then they hope they can scare you out of it, and they can buy it low when they can scare you when it's down, and they continue to make money. So Wall Street is a machine that you can't really fight. You can get on and ride if you pay attention and you can follow along. That's what we do in our portfolios. And that's why we manage them ourselves, because we don't like to get on the ride of the big firms and the big institutions, because they just ride the market. And then we become part of the problem. We become basically a piece of the machinery rather than something that's using the machinery. I mean, we want to use Wall Street for what it does. We don't want to be used by it. That's a big difference. I think that's what most people do, is they just get simple. They say, well, Wall Street's good and over time they make money, so we'll just trust them. You need to do your own plan. We like using additional products. For example, you can be aggressive and really attentive to the money that you have in the market and invest less than the Wall Street model would tell you and make more on that money, like we've proven to do over the last couple of years, especially since we've been doing more focused money management on our own rather than trusting the investors out there that claim they're so good at it and they don't do any better than the market. We find that those returns, if we can beat the market or be a little bit more aggressive on less money, then we can be more safe with things like annuities and like LERPs that I talk about that create income. If you can make the same in a stock and bond portfolio by managing it right and grow less money and be more aggressive on less money, you also have less at risk. You can lock in your income by using things that are built for income. The same thing pension companies use, the same things that the executives at the Wall Street companies use. They don't retire in a stock and bond portfolio. A lot of them have big pensions, and a lot of them are essentially annuities that they use in their pension plan. So you can do that yourself and add pensions to your portfolio, take less risk, not worry about these rules of thumb, take more than 4%, by the way. When you have guaranteed income, we have people taking 6, 8, and even 10% of their portfolio net worth out every year with virtually no risk. Statistically, no risk of running out of money and spending far more than 4%. So if you utilize the tools that are out there, the ones that Wall Street hates and the ones that they would tell you not to get into because it doesn't fit their model, then you might think you're making your retirement plan more complicated. You're not. You're just basically building a complete house instead of just throwing some cement on the dirt without a foundation and building some walls and roof and calling it a house. And that's kind of what I think the Wall Street model does, is it has only a few of the parts of a complete retirement model financial house. You need the whole house, not just a couple of pieces of it. So we try to use that whole house, build it strong, build a great foundation. That foundation is to replace the income you made during your job. It's to minimize taxes. It's to build some walls. It's take some appropriate risk that you can afford to take in the market so you can grow it. Protect it with a good solid roof with some income floors, principal protection on some of the assets, and save as much taxes as you can along the way. Make sure that you're covered for those long-term care bills when you get older and maybe need a little bit of help. Heaven forbid, get Alzheimer's and have to go to a facility that costs $10,000 or $12,000 a month in today's dollars. All those things need to be looked at. You can't guarantee that they're going to be there if everything you have is at risk, even if Wall Street tells you to. So I think that's probably the biggest answer, or the best answer I can give you, as far as too many people try to keep it too simple. They try to do the same thing they did to get them to retirement through retirement. They don't use all the tools that are out there. They don't focus on income. They don't focus on tax savings. They don't focus on anything but just, the rule of thumb is X, so I might as well just put it there and see how it goes. There's so many people that are coming into my office and are so underperforming based on what they expected or what their expectations were by using those rules of thumb. And they're not happy that even though the stock market bounced back, their portfolios haven't bounced back because they've got a ton of money in bonds that haven't been doing well. They haven't been keeping up. The cool thing about the way we use bonds is we let insurance companies invest the bonds. They take all the risk. They leverage the interest. We have principal protection. And if the bonds go down, that's not our problem. It's the insurance company's problem. But the interest that they make on our money is leveraged to make us more interest than we can make on our own. So why not let institutions protect our assets, which they're built to do? That's what insurance companies do, and grow our assets. So again, move out of the Wall Street only model and expand your horizons a little bit. And you can get a lot more comfort, a lot more peace of mind, a lot more confidence in retirement. Retire on your terms. Know you have the income to pay your bills throughout your lifetime, not just until the money runs out.
Jeff, great information. Want to take just a moment here to talk to our listeners. If you feel that you have an oversimplified retirement plan, stop risking your retirement with a plan that is too simple for your needs. Every day you wait, it really could cost you years of security. So we invite you right now to call 520-780-9059 to get your personalized Premier Retirement Roadmap. We're going to uncover the gaps, show you some smarter strategies, and put you on a path to retire with confidence and build a plan that is built for your personalized needs that isn't simple. It's not the 60-40 stock bond split or the rule of 100. Once again, don't wait another day. Your future is going to be too important to wait. Call 520-780-9059 or visit premret.com. Act now before it is too late to save your retirement plan. Once again, that number 520-780-9059. You're listening to Premier Retirement with Jeff Fogan, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management right here in Tucson, also with an office up in Mesa. Jeff, let's continue our program here by talking about 5 retirement questions to get right. Retirement is something I think almost everyone looks forward to, but so many people underestimate the choices that they'll face once they stop working. Can you give us a quick overview of why retirement decisions matter so much before you retire?
Well, if you're in the proactive mode, you plan, and that's what we call it, a plan. If you're in the reactive mode, you're just always bobbing and weaving based on what happened yesterday. And I think that's a little bit hard to do. Now, obviously, even though we make a plan, we use very conservative, even though, like, for example, our returns are typically higher than what we represent. But let's just say we need to average 6% a year on our income plan to make sure that we stay kind of intact. So maybe it doesn't one year. Oh, well, what are we going to do? Well, we at least have a plan. We also know that based on other things, we still have income needs met. We still have confidence that we don't have to freak out because, the market's down this year. Crap. Do I have to restructure my portfolio? Do I have to buy bonds now? Do I get out? Do I get in? If you're in the market, you don't want to have to be in a position to when anything happens, you have to decide whether your livelihood or your future depends on whether you get out or in at any given time. For example, you've got to have enough peace of mind in that plan to know that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. And that's the way we structure plans at Premier. But I meet people in their 70s right now, they've never really made a plan. They've just kept doing what they're doing. And they've luckily been okay because the market hasn't had any really huge corrections that have lasted a long time, like the one in 2000, one in 2008 did, because they've only been retired maybe 10 years or less. And they've never really experienced what would happen if the market corrected 50%, especially since they're living on all that money. So some people have kind of a false sense of security, I think. And if they listen to the show or they start thinking and realize volatility could happen and start really considering the what ifs, I think they get a little bit more proactive, at least think like, maybe should I do something? And it's never too late to plan, but it's better to plan early, obviously. It's better late than never. Unfortunately, and I'm going to go back to the story about Norm. He didn't really come into plan, at least to my office, until after his plan was broken. It had broken several times. He had basically fallen off the retirement mountain. He climbed up there and put his flag down and said, yee-hoo, I'm on the top. I retired. I got my $1 million. I can live forever. My broker says the market never goes down, so I'm good. And it did. That was in 2000, and the next 3 years he got hammered. And then in 2009, he finally meets me after the market comes back, after he's gotten a job, after he's taken Social Security early, after he's basically run out of 3/4 of his money, and says, can you help me? I think I'm hurting here. And I said, well, are you still using that same advisor? Well, yeah, he just keeps hanging in there. Well, hanging in there didn't do very well for him over 10 years, and I don't think it'll do very well for anybody else who has all their money at risk if the market crashes. Could it crash? Yeah, it could. I'd rather plan for the worst and hope for the best than just assume the worst isn't going to happen because it's different this time. That was what John Templeton said were the most dangerous words in the investment business is, oh, it's different this time. It might be different the way it unfolds or the timing of it, but it's never different in the fact that the market always returns to equilibrium. It always has 100 plus years. We have to expect that that's a roller coaster ride. So I think most people, going back to that, people have just kept their plans too simple. They haven't really got a plan. The simplicity of the plans, they think they have a plan, but they just use a couple of rules of thumb and say, I'll be okay. Or their broker just nurtures them along and says, oh, don't worry, it'll be okay. Well, that's fine for them to say. It's not their money. Our mantra, or what do you call it, our moniker basically is, it's your money, keep it that way. That's the whole statement of our company is you need to keep your money. You don't need to turn it over to let somebody else risk it for you who doesn't care about it, isn't treating you like it's your money. You need to remember that you are in control. And if you set it up right, you're not going to lose it. It will stay your money and not just vanish in thin air because somebody made a bad decision on your behalf and you let them. So again, I don't know if that answered your whole question, but bottom line is it's always better to prepare in advance. I've actually had a girl come in this week who got smart. Her mom listens to the radio and brought her in. She's 23, already graduated from college, has a nice job, making a little above 6 figures and already saving some money. I mean, wow, she's got a way big head start. And you're showing her just by being consistent how better off she can be than most of the people that I meet when they come in their 50s, including her mother, by the way, who may in fact decide that it's not too late for her to start a plan too, but at least she's getting her daughter on board a little earlier than she did. So the earlier start, the better. But just because you're 70 doesn't mean you can't do something. And just because you're 60 doesn't mean, oh, I've only got a few years retirement, I'm up a creek. Well, you may be, you might find out that you didn't do enough planning or that you spent too much money and had way too much fun during your working years. And if you did, well, consider that your fun. And retirement might be a little bit more bleak. But if you've done it right, and I think most people, what they find after they've been here and we set them up a plan, when they have the confidence in their income, they can be a little bit more confident or maybe have a little bit more peace of mind, maybe not be forced to be super frugal or super conservative with their investments if they know all their bills are getting paid and they have a budget for travel and budget to do fun things, and then they can adjust their lifestyle and find those fun things that fit inside a reliable and predictable, if not guaranteed, income plan.
Talking with Jeff Logan of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa, talking about decisions that you need to make before you retire. Once again, 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. If you'd like to come in and talk to Jeff, get your Premier Retirement Roadmap at no cost and no obligation, you can make that call right now, 520-780-9059. Leave your name, telephone number. Shelley will take some basic information from you and set you up with an appointment with Jeff. Again, 520-780-9059. Talking about these decisions that you need to make before you retire. Jeff, timing matters. How much difference does retiring at 62 versus 67 make potentially?
Well, I think it all matters how much you make, how much you've already saved. I mean, for example, somebody hasn't saved much at all and is forced to take Social Security and live on $100,000 in savings. The difference between retiring at 62 and 67 is huge, especially if you're finding yourself at those higher earnings years in the last 5 years of your career. Maybe you're able to save $100,000 a year because you're making $250,000, and after taxes, you can put away $100,000 a year those next 5 years. I mean, that's $500,000 instead of $100,000. That could increase your income significantly. Not to mention, Social Security is going to go up about 30 or 40% in that period of time as well. So you could probably double or triple your retirement income. Well, maybe not double or triple it, but I mean, you can make a significant difference if you're starting out on the low end. However, if somebody's done really well and they've got a few $1 million set aside, working an extra couple of years, the difference between $3 million now and $3.5 million in the future may only increase your income maybe 5 or 10% per year. So instead of living on 150, you live on 160. Is that a big deal, or would you rather have those extra 5 years? So again, it kind of depends on what your plan is. And I don't have a problem with people retiring early and taking Social Security early and keeping their savings intact and earning interest and growth on that if they invest it right, including guaranteed growth at a much higher rate, then there's annuities that guarantee income that grow at a much higher rate, a much faster clip than Social Security. So if you can, instead of taking IRA money out and using it and spending it and having it be gone, why not just take your Social Security now? I don't know how long Social Security trust fund is going to be intact and how long it'll be before they make adjustments to it. So might as well get that money out, save the money that you have that is yours, that's in your possession, instead of leave it in the trust fund at Social Security, hoping that down the road you'll get more out of it. The other thing is to get more out of Social Security, you have to live long enough to get more out of it. So if you're in the scenario where you're deciding to retire at 62 or 67 and you don't have a whole lot in savings, you might have no choice but to wait. It would be smart to wait, especially if you're going to work till age 67, which is full retirement age. If you work before that age, they withhold some of your Social Security depending on your income. So you don't want to get too excited about retiring early unless you have a significant amount of assets set aside, knowing that you're going to have 5 extra years. That might mean that those 5 years you go through one extra market crash than the next guy does during their retirement, who retires later than you. Can you weather the storm? Do you have assets in a safe place? But I would say that if you're 62 and can't retire, you still need to make a plan so you can retire at age 67. And if you're planning on retiring at 62, I hope we've met before you're at 62, or that you're in good enough shape and got lucky enough to live within your means and save enough to where it makes sense. And very often that's the case. Some people kind of know what their goal is and they hit that number and they think, okay, well, this should be a good number. Let's see what it really does. And we can help you with those numbers. What's a guaranteed income? What's a projected income? What's a what if income? The what if income might be more. The what if income could also run you out of money already too. So you want the what if, or do you want the guaranteed, or somewhere in between? Maybe some what if money, that you can swing for the fences and try to get good growth on if it's managed correctly, and some income that supplements your pensions and Social Security that guarantees that the bills that you have are going to be paid for as long as you are around. And then figure out maybe some other options that may not be guaranteed income, but very predictable income because they have certain aspects of principal protection or buffers on the downside and good growth opportunities. In addition to that, what about taxes? Can you take that money out efficiently and drop your tax bill from $35,000 a year, which was your projection if you just left it in the typical Wall Street model or a 401k distribution model? Maybe pay taxes at a faster clip early. Manipulation of your tax code a little bit, not illegal. I'm talking about taking advantage of the tax code and making some good plans to where you pay a few more taxes now. Maybe your taxes go from 35 to 45 for 5 years, but then they go down to 15 for the rest of your life. I mean, that's a good trade. 5 or 6 years of maybe extra $5,000 or $10,000 in taxes to save 10 or more thousand for the next 30, I think is a pretty good trade. And if you look at it on a map and do the math, you'll find out that tax planning is a huge differentiator between how you retire and how much money you can spend, obviously.
Talking with Jeff Hogan of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa. Retirement's too important to leave to chance. Every decision that you make, from when you retire to how you spend your money to the taxes you pay, can have a lifelong impact. So don't wait until it's too late. Call 520-780-9059 today to get your personalized retirement roadmap. Our team is going to walk you through your income, your taxes, and help you find a plan that lasts your entire retirement. You can also visit primret.com right now to schedule your roadmap. Spots are limited, and every day you wait could cost you thousands of dollars. So take action today. Secure the retirement that you deserve. It's super simple to do. As I said, you can call us right now at 520-780-9059. Leave your name and telephone number. Shelley will call you back and set up that appointment. You can also go to primret.com and request your appointment there, too. Again, no cost, no obligation, no judgment. We'll meet you where you are. 520-780-9059. As I said, we're also online at primret.com. Jeff, time to take a break here on Premier Retirement. When we come back, we're going to be answering listener questions. We'll also talk about how AI can't design your retirement portfolio when our program continues here on 790 KNST, Tucson's most stimulating talk.
You can't start a trip you've never taken without a plan, and you can't start your retirement journey without a comprehensive plan to get there safely. To request your no-cost Premier Retirement Roadmap, call 580-780-9059 or request it online at premret.com. Now back to more Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan and Jeff Shea.
Thank you so much for making us a part of your weekend. You're listening to Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa. We've had a very good show today. If you hear anything that piques your interest, our phone number 520-780-9059. Also, a reminder, we're on the air for you 4 times a week, Saturdays at 7 a.m., 9 a.m., and 1 p.m., and also Sundays at 11 a.m., and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We're on our podcast. Go to wherever you get your podcast, search for Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan. You'll find this show and all of our past shows so you can stay on top of your journey towards a confident retirement. Okay, Jeff, time for listener questions. We've got 3 of them today. We'll start off with David listening to us in Tucson. David says, I'm 67, single, and have a paid-off mortgage. I'm planning on retiring this summer. I have $1.1 million in my 401k and IRA and a $2,800 Social Security check. This is all the money I have. How much could I potentially and reasonably spend each month in retirement?
Well, if you look at the rule of thumb, when we talked about that earlier, the Wall Street would tell you, well, 4% rule is probably reasonable. So maybe another $3,500 or so a month, maybe. So you could live on $60,000 or $70,000 a year, no problem. My opinion would be, if you structured it to where you put roughly 2/3 of that into income-producing guaranteed income sources, some tax-free and some non-tax-free. Keep in mind, if it's a 401k and an IRA, you'd have to pay tax on some of that if you want to do a kind of a tax plan and do some Roth conversions and create some tax-free income or use LERPs and things like that. If you're healthy, you're still at an age where those might work for you. But I would say your income level should be about probably a good $5,000 in income over and above it. With only 2/3 your money, you should be able to get about $5,000 or more out of that in guaranteed or predictable income, and then have another $300,000 or $400,000 that you can invest in the market and use that for maybe the 4% rule, and not even use the 4% rule, and just use it as money when you need it. And if the market's not doing good, you don't have to take it out, or you have some in a safe place where you can always grab it and kind of wait on the rest of it. So I would go real aggressive with about 1/3 of your money, not worry about bonds, but have 2/3 of it in something that's a little bit more safe, secure. That would be how my happy clients would do it. If you're trying to maximize your income on a guaranteed level and a predictable level, you don't want to keep it in the stock market. You don't want to keep it in stocks and bonds because it's not predictable and there is no guarantee. Especially if you're 67, you might have a 30-year retirement ahead of you and you can't afford 2 or 3 big market corrections along the way, or you will run out of money, like Norm, like we've mentioned a couple of times today. You don't want to run out of money in retirement. That's the only thing worse than dying. So guarantee the income, probably get you to about $8,000 a month pretty comfortably. That's maybe even $10,000 a month if you use the risk money. So if you can live on 100 to 120 a year and be comfortable, I don't think that's out of line. I think that's reasonable based on the plans that we do every day and based on your acceptance and openness to using something other than a stock or a bond or an ETF.
David, that's a good question. We appreciate you listening to us. And David doesn't say whether or not he has any children or heirs that he wants to pass things on to, but that could create a pretty good retirement income. David, 520-780-9059 is your telephone number if you want to explore this further with Jeff. No cost or no obligation. And again, thanks for listening to us in Tucson. Okay, Jeff, next question. Mark's in Reedy Ranch, and Mark says, I'm 69 and married. My wife and I have a house worth $500,000. We've been retired for 2 years, and my wife is also retired. We have a combined Social Security payment of $4,000 a month. We also have pensions paying $3,000 a month, so total here of $7,000 a month. We can pay our bills in $4,000 a month. My question's about paying for assisted living or long-term care when the time comes. My plan is to invest $2,500 a month to help pay for the care, along with possibly selling the house when the time comes. I estimate the need to be in about 10 years. Is this a reasonable plan, or do you have another solution?
Well, honestly, I would love to see you spend some of that $3,000 over and above what you need to live on to be used for some fun and excitement. Your home will likely be plenty to cover both of you if that is the backup plan. Likely be plenty if you've got investments. If it's just income and no investments, well, then your house is your investment. But keep in mind, when the first person gets sick, you could do a reverse mortgage and take maybe close to half of the equity of your house out. That would be another $250,000. Let's say if the average stay in a nursing home is 3 years, that's $80,000 or so a year, which in current dollars would more than cover that. And if your house continues to appreciate in value, you should be able to sell the house when the second of you ends up going. So the house is definitely a backup plan and definitely a long-term care plan, in my opinion, because you can access those funds early. And if you don't save $2,500 a month, maybe you use $15,000 a year to do some fun vacations and enjoy the next 10 years. I don't think you'll be hurting me. You will have some savings set aside to buffer the what if and the oops it expenses that come along the way. I also think 10 years might be a little short-term, outlook. I hope 79 is not the life expectancy unless you already know you have some health issues and things that are going on. But definitely at your age, I would not encourage you to buy long-term care insurance where you pay money in and might not ever use it, and they keep raising the rates to where you'll never probably be able to afford it. and they'll help you burn through that extra $2,500 a month for something you may not even use. So you've got a 50-50 chance that you'll go to a nursing home before you die. That's kind of the statistics out there. So one of you probably will. There's a possibility both of you will. So I think the house equity is probably a good place to look for that. If you put away some money, great. But I would say that as you get a little ahead of the game, or if the $2,500 a month, if you just are really focused on saving that much, that every once in a while, if it outperforms the market, or if you're doing better than what you thought as far as the savings plan goes, use some of it while you're still young and healthy in the go-go years. I mean, if you're planning to be checking out into a nursing home in 10 years, then I hope the next 10 years is a lot of fun, unless you've already had all the fun you need and you just want to sit around and wait. But that's not what I would suggest, and certainly not what I hope your situation is requiring. Hopefully you have some fun. I think you're in a position to have enough. You've obviously managed your money well and can live on a responsible budget. I don't want to call it a tight or a frugal budget. I hate those words. But I don't even like the word budget. I think you've got a spending plan. If it works for you, then maybe you don't have big needs or you've never been an extravagant spender. But if you haven't traveled and done some fun stuff, make some memories in those final years. That's what I would suggest.
Mark, we appreciate you listening to us in Rita Ranch, and we hope that you don't need it in 10 years. You'd only be 79, as Jeff said. Hopefully, we're going to give you about another 10 years here. But anyway, if you want to talk to Jeff, 520-780-9059. You can make that call right now if you want. Okay, Jeff, next question. Richard is hearing us in Savannah, and Richard says, I'm 44 years old. I'm married, and I have 2 kids under the age of 8. I'm considering getting whole life insurance to protect my family. Can you tell me how whole life insurance works? I was quoted over $1,000 a month for whole life and $200 for term for 20 years, paying $1 million. I'm considering getting term life and investing the $800 difference in premiums. What are your thoughts?
Well, whole life is the most expensive kind of life insurance. It's whole life because at that rate of $1,000 a month, they're projecting that it'll be worth at least whatever your death benefit is when you're age 100. In other words, the cash value will grow to that. They're essentially are investing the other $800 a month into cash value that will continue to pay for the insurance when you're 80 or 90 years old. The deal with a term life, if you're just looking at term to make sure your kids get to college or you get a down payment on a house when they get married 20, 30, 40 years down the road, and you just want a term policy for 20 or 30 years, then maybe that's the route you go, and then you do invest the rest. The other option you might want to look at is IUL, Index Universal Life, which is a lot cheaper. The cost of insurance is cheaper. And the cool thing is you can buy a big death benefit right now. You can still invest that same $1,000 a month, have it grow at a bigger rate if you use indexed universal, meaning index, not whole life. Most whole life is either kind of a variable version, which is really expensive if you look at the costs associated with it. And by the way, whole life pays the highest commission. So, I would love it if you want to buy whole life from me. But honestly, I don't think it works as well for the clients as universal and invest the difference. But if you want to do some version of term and invest the difference, I like IUL because you can buy a lot more insurance while you're young. And you can adjust the death benefit later and reduce the cost of insurance or the amount of death benefit, which will help your cash value grow even faster than it would in a whole life policy. In other words, you have a growth account. The cool thing about insurance, and one of the things that's still cool about whole life, is that the cash value in there is tax-free. You can borrow against it or you can pull it out as a withdrawal, but if you borrow against it, it's tax-free. The other thing is typically the cost of insurance is high on whole life. The cost of loans typically is high on whole life. I just saw a whole life policy from an executive over at Caterpillar. A client brought his policy in, and that whole life policy is guaranteed to make him 5% a year in interest on the cash value. But if he ever borrows money, he has to pay 8% per year. That is the fixed rate. I can't understand how that is the case. On an index universal life, you can get fixed rates as low as 2.5% to 3.5%, or you can get a variable rate of 5.5%, where on a variable rate, you get the participation in the index. And historically, they've averaged between 6 and 10%. So you can actually make more than the loan cost you if you ever did borrow against it. IUL is a lot more efficient. I like it. That's what we call LIRPs, life insurance retirement plans. You might want to use it because there's a couple of things you might really like to do in about 10 or 12 years when your kids reach college age. And that is, if you have this big life insurance policy, even if it's $1,000 a month, and let's say you buy $1 million worth of death benefit, and let's say in the next 10 years, you've got $200,000 in cash value, you can borrow against that cash value, send your kids to school. If you write a check directly to the institution and do some things that are tax deductible, you actually can borrow tax-free and get a tax deduction with that same money on the rest of your earnings. So you could actually really hit a home run tax-wise if you do the tax planning right and you protect yourself from those future college bills that could otherwise be, I have to pull money out or borrow money from my 401k, or I have to take money out of something in order to pay for it. I might get a tax deduction. Oh, well, but what if you could borrow against a future death benefit and get your kids through college, which is why you have the insurance in the first place. When you're done, getting your kids out of the house. Maybe you don't need that death benefit anymore. You can take that, I'm just using a round number, $1 million death benefit, and you can drop it to, let's say, $200,000 or $300,000. And then now your cash value, which is close to that $200,000 or $300,000, continues to grow faster because the difference between your cash value and your death benefit is the cost of insurance. In other words, if you reduce the cost of the policy, your cash will grow faster, and that's real money you can spend down the road rather than just wait until you're 100 years old and your whole life policy finally has enough money in it that it equals the original death benefit, which takes a long time. You can't touch it if you're going to do that. And if you ever borrow against it, it costs you more than you make. And so it will actually ruin the policy in most cases rather than allow the policy to continue to work efficiently until you pass away. I like the flexibility of universal. The word universal means flexible. You can change death benefits. You can adjust it to where your costs go up or down depending on what your needs are. You can choose your income however you want to, whether you want it to be taxable, whether you want it to be non-taxable, whether you want the loans to be variable and participatory or just fixed. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of things. I just blew a fire hose of information out at you to probably confuse you even more than you already are. Bottom line is, I think you're at a point where you probably do need life insurance. If you can't afford the $1,000 a month, then maybe $200 is a smart thing to do to at least cover you for those inevitable, it's not the inevitable, but the possibilities that something happens premature to you and that you're not able to take care of bills and support your wife or your kids, get them out of their house and get them on their own like a good father wants to do. So again, look at the situation. You might even consider that instead of putting money away in a 401k or a Roth, you might even want to double up on the IUL so you have future tax-free income in retirement over and above, which you might need to send your kids to college and do other things along the way. So if you want a robust plan, something a little bit more than just, hey, let's sell you a whole life or let's buy term, if you're just looking at that and they're kind of leaving that to you to make the decision, well, let me help walk you through our Premier Retirement Plan. We can put it on a spreadsheet, see what the math says is the best deal, and see if it makes more sense to actually increase a LURP in lieu of doing Roth conversions or Roth contributions to your 401k. Never stop contributing to your 401k, at least to the extent that the company matches you. That's free money. I would never suggest you do that. However, some people are maxing their 401k out in order to get a big tax deduction that they might not need and to find out that they're in a higher tax bracket when they retire and would have done better by doing some tax-free planning early in their years in their 40s and 50s instead of just kicking that tax can down the road and then finding out they're in a world of hurt.
Richard, that's a good question. We appreciate you listening to us in Savannah. And again, 520-780-9059 is Jeff's telephone number. If you'd like to explore this further, 520-780-9059. Listening to Premier Retirement with Jeff Bogan. My name is Jeff Shade. Glad you could join us again this week. You know, here at Premier Retirement, we want you to be better prepared for your retirement future so that you can have that better quality of life. So if you're looking to have a casual conversation to help you understand your options and what it takes to preserve your wealth so you can have a better quality of life and create an income stream you can count on, maybe reduce taxes, the Premier Retirement Roadmap just might be the answer for you. And again, we're offering it at no cost and no obligation. 520-780-9059. Leave your name, telephone number. Shelley will call you back during the week and set up a time for you to sit down with Jeff and begin to explore your options with that Premier Retirement Roadmap. Again, it's not going to cost you a dime. 520-780-9059. You can also find out more about us online at premret.com, Premret.com. Jeff, let's talk about artificial intelligence. AI is taking over so many parts of our lives. I mean, we can write emails with it. We can even compose music. But when it comes to retirement planning, you've said that there are some big limitations. Can you explain why AI isn't the silver bullet that people might think it is when it comes to retirement planning?
Well, AI only just assimilates everything that's out there and comes up with this kind of average aggregate of information that may or may not be right for you. So, if you want a big comprehensive plan, it'll probably take into consideration all the things that are out there. Is it specifically designed to you? AI probably has a harder time to do that. I mean, what can AI do? Can they pick an advisor that relates to you, that is aligned values-wise with you? Probably not. Is AI your advisor? Maybe. If you like having conversations with ChatGPT and you become friends with Mr. Chat or Mrs. Chat, whoever it is, maybe you think that everything they say is the gospel truth and can help you along the way. I mean, they're only making decisions based on the information that they have and that they can go out and gather on the internet, which is robust. Granted, ChatGPT knows probably more than I do. But the thing is I do know very well the things that apply to the clientele that I deal with and the type of people that have worked hard for their money, that want to retire, that have saved well, that have saved enough, that have gotten to a point of affluence where they want to protect it, live on it, and not worry about retirement. If you're a billionaire, you probably don't have to worry. I don't have that many billionaire clients. Actually, I do have billionaires in the family of my clients. However, I don't think you get a specific enough drill down to what you need with AI. I let AI give me ideas, but then I assume those ideas are a good start. And then I go and do things that I think are better and more specifically geared to me and my own value system. That's one thing AI can't do. It doesn't know my value system unless I've really been chatting with AI for a long, long time, or I've been letting it track my phone and do everything. And well, maybe with social media, a lot of people probably have all that database in AI and they could probably develop a plan. Maybe, I don't know. Bottom line is AI can analyze trends. They can help pick some stocks sometimes, even suggest some strategies, but it's not just numbers. There's emotions involved. There's goals involved. Can you really articulate those goals to AI and have it come back with a meaningful response? I don't know. I have not found that to be the case. I'll probably still be old school till I die, meaning I like face-to-face. I like treating my clients like family. I like feeling like our premier community is a family. I think it is sticky. People don't leave. Rarely do they find out that we're not fit. We go through a pretty extensive process to figure out if we make sense to work together anyway. And if we do, we bring on board after, several visits, not just you come in and we sign you up and then tell you what we're going to do. We tell you what we're going to do, what we're all about, and you have plenty of time to decide whether or not you want to come aboard. And the people that do, I think, like us because we do take that time and we do nurture that relationship and we do sit face to face with you. And, I can see your facial expressions and your body language when I say something that might not fit or might not resonate with you. And you can see mine when I think you're maybe talking off the cuff or being a little crazy. You probably see my reactions. And so we kind of know how to communicate better. I don't think AI sees body language or understands facial expressions because it's not watching you. I don't know. Maybe I've got a bad idea of what AI is. I just don't think it can do everything that a human can do. The human interaction, I think, is what's made our business special since the beginning, way back in the day. I used to work on a phone, dialing for dollars in a stock brokerage house and a wirehouse that all we did is sell risk. It was never really that personal. I tried to get to know the people over the phone. They didn't really have a lot of time with it. Typically, I was bugging them before business or after hours at home and interrupting the dinner hour and stuff like that. And it just wasn't that personal. It was just really just a high fast-paced sales mill. I mean, it just didn't resonate with me. I didn't like it. And so that's why I started my own company, to have that personal touch. AI just doesn't. It doesn't understand your emotions. I think just from that standpoint, it's huge. I will also say that our investment strategies and the way that we do our asset management keeps up with a lot of these AI models. These AI models are only as good as their last trade. Some of them claim to have this great track record of great returns from a month to a month, or they cherry pick a certain period of time when they beat the market and sell you on the idea that they can make better decisions on when to buy and sell. I don't know what their algorithm is, but it doesn't change based on what your emotions or what your needs are, or what your gut ache says is too much or too little risk. It does things based on what it thinks is right for you. So if you want AI to be your fiduciary and have them know you on a very technical basis, but not a human basis, maybe AI is for you. And honestly, I think AI is probably really geared more for the 20 or 30-year-old starting out investor that doesn't really like that personal interaction anyway. And they've always done everything on their phone or on a computer, and they don't like the interaction because maybe it's a little too personal or too close to them. And so I think AI has a place. It hasn't really found a place in my business, and it hasn't found a place to my knowledge with any of my clients. And if it does, I guess they'll probably leave and go have ChatGPT be their advisor, but we haven't seen that yet. I hope we don't ever see that. I hope we can always do a good job and create that extra value of hands-on and kind of the warm and fuzziness that you get from a personal visit and a phone call and a returned email within 24 hours, and the things that we strive to do on a regular basis. AI might also use market averages and come up with unrealistic goals, and they don't anticipate certain changes in life because it doesn't know that your grandkids are all going to have babies and you like to give them big gifts and go see them. And it's just not going to know all that stuff. I don't know how robust you can be with the input of information and how well it can interpret what your income plan needs to be based on those life-changing events that when will happen, but AI probably doesn't. And again, I think that's just a human connection is the biggest difference. And if that's important to you, then a company like us is probably a great place to have a relationship with. But if it isn't important to you, then we probably won't add value.
Jeff, you've mentioned in the past before that AI can provide inaccurate information, especially on things like taxes and IRAs and loan programs. Can you give our listeners an example, a real-world example of how that could go wrong?
It aggregates so much information that doesn't necessarily exclude or eliminate the old information when new stuff comes along. For example, if the IRA contribution limits or the tax levels for when you can contribute to an IRA versus a Roth IRA go up or down, it may give you information from a year ago. In fact, I was just searching some things just in the last week or so on various cases, and things that I know are in effect now are not coming back to me when I ask ChatGPT or ask it. So I would be making decisions based on last year's information. The other thing is After COVID, we had so many changes with the Secure Act and things about when you take your required minimum distributions, what happens with an inherited IRA. That is still up in question, and they've changed the rulings on it so many times. I don't even know if we've come to some resolution. So AI would probably give you whatever the aggregate formula is, but it might not be specific to something that just passed last week. I was looking at some of the sales that went on at Barrett-Jackson, because I like collector cars and stuff, just this last week, and they couldn't update it current. It was only giving me what sold in 2025 or 2024. I'm like, well, I want to know what's sold in 2026. This auction's been going for weeks now, and we've got all kinds of data. Why can't I get it? I could go on the website and find out that on some of the Barrett-Jackson stuff, but AI did not have it yet. So I think it's going to always lag. AI is a great tool. It will flag some things, but if you give AI the wrong input, you forget to add a 0 to your income, or you put your yearly income instead of monthly and it thinks it's monthly instead of yearly, or whatever. If it gets it backwards, it's going to give you some weird assumptions, and it could possibly not give you the right answers. I think with the extra eyes of an advisor, if I saw an answer that came up and looked kind of bizarre and weird and didn't look like it was normal or in the realm of normal, I would go back and say, hey, wait, we got to look at this. For example, just this last week, we had a client that had taken a required minimum distribution on an inherited IRA. And again, those things are changing so often. That's why it came to mind right now. The problem is the withdrawal was so low because it was based on a different age than it should have been, based on an error in the input, that it was not as much as it was supposed to be. So there's either going to be a penalty, or we have to fix it, or we have to say, hey, well, if we don't catch it, it's going to be a penalty. AI would not have caught it. In fact, it was basically the computer program that told us what it should have been. And it wasn't, in fact, the number. Because it came so low, we went back and looked and said, wait a minute, no, these withdrawals were already being taken based on the decedent's age, and it should continue there. And, we had to make sure that we fixed that before it got this person in trouble. So again, you have to take AI as a tool, not as a replacement, I think, for the human nature or the extra set of eyeballs that are more accustomed to the real world and to a set of data that is very much like the people we deal with. For example, the type of people that we deal with on a regular basis are just normal people that have worked hard, that have made some money, that have enough that they need some tax planning. They have enough that they probably don't have to worry, if structured right, don't have to worry about going broke in retirement. And when you deal with the same type of demographic over and over again for 30 years, it's easy to spot inaccuracies or data that comes back wrong. If you're AI and you have the aggregate of everybody from somebody who saves 0 to somebody who saves billions, and somebody that owns yachts and real estate, and somebody that lives in a slum and rents an apartment, if you have all that data together, how are they going to come up with the accurate answer for you? Data sources are infinite rather than tailored specifically to the demographic that we're working with. So I love AI. I think it's awesome that they can do so much, and I love it as a tool. I love talking to it. If I just have a quick question, I like it way better than Siri. ChatGPT is so much more fun than Siri. I hated her voice anyway and shut it off as soon as I ever got a new iPhone. But I do like the advances that they're making. I think it's amazing that they can aggregate all this information and have it available at our fingertips. It just blows my mind how great a tool it is, but it is not a replacement for humans.
Great information, Jeff. I want to talk to our listeners here for just a moment. If you're even slightly worried about whether or not your retirement plan is realistic, it's safe, or tailored to your life, I want you to act now and call us here at 520-780-9059 at Premier Retirement and request your Premier Retirement Roadmap. Don't let AI or some generic advice put your future at risk, because every day you wait could cost you thousands of dollars or years off your retirement lifestyle. Get your personalized retirement roadmap by calling 520-780-9059 or online at primret.com. A human advisor in the form of Jeff will sit down with you and look at your goals and your income, your family situation, and build a plan that actually works for you, not some one-size-fits-all AI suggestion. Again, we're offering this retirement roadmap at no cost and no obligation. 520-780-9059 or online at primret.com. Your future is going to thank you. Jeff, out of time for this week. I want to thank you for your time, but most importantly, I want to thank our great listeners here in the greater Tucson area. So for Jeff Ogun, I'm Jeff Shade. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week right here with another edition of Premier Retirement on 790 KNST, Tucson's most stimulating talk.
Investment advisory services provided through Premier Wealth Advisors, LLC, an Arizona state-registered investment advisor. Securities transactions are placed through TD Ameritrade. Insurance and annuity products are offered through Premier Advantage, Inc., DBA Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any reference to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying abilities of the insurance carrier. The show is intended for informational purposes only and is is not to be construed as advice or recommendations. Due to show format, accuracy, and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Premier Retirement and its representatives do not provide legal or tax advice and may only conduct business with residents of states and jurisdictions where they're properly registered.